I'm Father Louis SCURTI with Friends of the Word with this production of the Weekday Word. The Weekday Word is a segment of Friends of the Word, and the whole purpose of Friends of the Word is to break open the Scriptures and share God's Word with you, our audience. Who's the audience? Anyone who partakes of our program. And the focus of our program today is sharing God's Word, listening to the Scriptures, maybe starting a Bible study where you are, based on the Scriptures that we follow, and we follow the liturgical year, and maybe grow together as a community. We also entertain questions, so once in a while send me in your questions. I'm going to read a question in a few seconds from someone called Alan, and his question has to do with the Old and New Testament. But before that, if you have any questions, contact me at Father Louis SCURTI, that's F-R, Father Louis SCURTI, at hotmail.com. And we also invite you onto our web pages, FatherLouisScurtiMinistry.com, and then you'll see all the activities of Friends of the Word or the Weekday Word. Okay, before we read the Scriptures, I want to entertain this question from Alan. Why is God so severe in the Old Testament as to compare to the New Testament? Well, the people of the Old Testament, we have to look to Abram, who was called out of Ur, Mesopotamia, to follow a monotheistic God. He lived in a culture of polytheism. Now, that may not sound so unique. In a sense, we as Christians live in a polytheistic culture too. The polytheistic culture maybe are the gods of money and greed and power and accumulation. And it's hard to focus on living the monotheistic faith in Jesus Christ. An aside. So Abram is called out of Ur to go to the Promised Land. His name is eventually changed to Abraham because he is going to be the father of many people, many nations. What's happening is a sociological event. Abram is being called to profess his faith in a monotheistic, nameless God in a culture in which everybody has a God. Everybody has a God of wind, fire, birth, life, etc. Not Abram. Abram is being called to follow the nameless God. I am, eventually, we learn is his name from Moses. So why is God so severe in the Old Testament? Not the severity of God so much as the loyalty he expects from his people, the Israelites, because these people are chosen. They're the chosen people. They've been chosen to follow this monotheistic God and to introduce monotheism into the world. Now, a little historical aside. At the same time, in Egypt, Akhenaten, who was a king / pharaoh / god, also introduced the concept of Aten, a monotheistic god who was the sun. So the uniqueness is very interesting because at the same historical time, Abram is following a God who has no name in Semitic culture in Mesopotamia, while in Egypt there is a monotheistic thrust. That dies out eventually, and the subsequent king, who you know, Tutankhamun, is the last of the monotheistic pharaohs. Aside, let's go back to God. Under the jurisdiction of the Israelites, God is leading the people of Abram out of Ur into freedom. Wars, rebellions, problems, constantly. Read the Old Testament. The first 5 books are called the Pentateuch. The people of Israel can't easily just set up a tent and adore one God. The people of Israel have a problem because they're living in an anti-monotheistic culture. So God is really severe with them in a sense. He's a jealous God. He doesn't want them to intermarry. He doesn't want them to worship false gods. And he's constantly calling them back to their role as his chosen people, his chosen lover. Even in the book of Hosea, the prophet, describes his role with his wife, metaphorically, as him always seeking Gomer, his wife. And Gomer is a prostitute at times. And Hosea constantly goes back and brings Gomer home. Why? God is telling us, no matter what you do, I'm bringing you home. And it may seem severe, but I'm bringing you home because you are chosen. And the people of Israel, God's chosen one. We'll continue this concept of God as a severe God and Jesus as a loving God in future programs, and we'll also use the Holy Scriptures of the New Testament to bring us into the liturgical year. Thank you for your question, Alan. Let's hear from you. This is Father Lou SCURTI with Friends of the Word, the Weekday Word.